15 years of marriage sounds solid on paper. Stability, love, partnership. But no one tells you what happens when that stability turns into silence. Ethan and I married right after college. We were those people everyone envied, high school sweethearts who made it through the storms and built a decent life together in Austin, Texas. He was steady, loyal, responsible, the kind of man any woman would want. And yet, somewhere between mortgage payments and dinner leftovers, we stopped seeing each other. Every morning was the same. Ethan up by 6, coffee brewing, quick kiss on the cheek, a small smile that felt more like routine than affection. We'd talk about grocery lists or whose turn it was to pay the bills. I'd ask about his work at the engineering firm. He'd ask if I sold any houses that week. That was it. The rhythm of a comfortable, fading marriage. The first time I felt the distance, it wasn't a big moment, just a quiet one. I remember putting on a new dress one evening before dinner. Something bright, something that used to make his eyes light up. I walked into the kitchen, hoping he'd notice. He didn't even look up from his laptop. "Food's almost ready," he said. Something inside me cracked that day. I smiled, but inside I felt hollow. I told myself every marriage gets dull, that it's normal, that love changes. But it wasn't love changing, it was me. I was changing. That's when I signed up for yoga. Not because I wanted fitness, because I needed distraction. Somewhere to breathe. The first few classes were harmless. But one evening, as I was leaving the studio, a man held the door for me. Ryan Carter. He had that easy charm, the kind that sneaks up on you. Divorced, funny, and confident in a way that made me feel seen. We ended up talking in the parking lot for almost an hour about everything: music, work, life. I told myself it was just friendly. But that's how all mistakes start, with small, harmless moments. Weeks passed and Ryan became my coffee friend. Then a lunch friend. Then something I couldn't label without hating myself a little. The first time he touched my hand, it wasn't even planned. We were sitting in his car after yoga, laughing about something dumb, and his fingers brushed mine. It was like electricity, the kind I hadn't felt in years. And I didn't pull away. After that, it spiraled fast. Coffee turned to dinners. Dinners turned to hotel rooms. And every time I went home to Ethan, I washed off guilt that never fully went away. Ethan wasn't dumb. He started noticing the changes. The phone flipped face down during dinner, the late showings that didn't exist, the new clothes I never wore around him. "Who's texting you this late?" he asked once. "Just a client," I said too quickly. He stared at me, really stared, and I looked away. I knew then he didn't believe me. Not entirely. The guilt ate me alive, but the fear of losing Ryan felt worse. With him, I felt alive, something I hadn't felt in years. And still, I knew what I was doing was wrong. One afternoon, he surprised me at the office. My assistant said, "Your husband's here," and I froze. I told him I was working late that day. When I walked out, he smiled politely. "Thought we could grab lunch," he said. But my stomach dropped. Ryan and I had met that morning. I told Ethan I had back-to-back client appointments. I forced a smile and said, "Oh, I already ate." His face didn't change, but something in his eyes did. A quiet suspicion, one that didn't leave after that day. From then on, Ethan became quieter, observant, distant in a way that scared me more than anger ever could. He wasn't asking to fix things anymore, he was watching. And the worst part? I still couldn't stop. Every lie became easier to say. Every "I love you" before bed felt emptier. I thought I was being careful, deleting messages, changing passwords, using yoga as a perfect excuse. I never realized Ethan had started keeping track. Every time I left, every time I came home, every outfit, every lie. And one night, when I came back from my so-called yoga class, he was sitting in the living room, calm, unreadable. "How was yoga?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "Good. Exhausting." He smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Yeah, I bet." And just like that, I knew he knew. Still, I didn't confess. I couldn't. Instead, I pretended everything was fine, not realizing my marriage was already over, just waiting for the curtain to fall. I used to think Ethan's silence was just how he handled stress. But after that night, the one where he asked, "Yeah, I bet, when I came home from yoga, something changed." He wasn't silent anymore. He was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that makes you feel watched. For days, he acted normal. Made coffee every morning. Kissed me goodbye like nothing was wrong. But I could feel it. The difference. He wasn't just existing beside me anymore. He was studying me. Every move, every lie, every breath. The irony? I thought I was the one living a double life, but turns out he was building one too, one where he played detective, and I was the case file. I didn't know it then, but he'd started following me. Checking where I went, noting what I wore, how long I was gone. I was so confident in my cover stories that I didn't notice the small things. The way he stopped asking, "How is yoga?" and started saying, "You looked beautiful today," in that careful, deliberate tone. I thought he was trying to fix things. I wanted to believe that. One Thursday afternoon, I told him I had a late showing across town. In reality, I was meeting Ryan at his friend's place, a small house near Lake Travis. We hadn't seen each other for almost a week, and every text from him made the guilt louder and the temptation stronger. We spent hours together that day, talking, holding each other, pretending the world outside didn't exist. For those few hours, I felt like a different person, not a wife, not a liar, just someone who mattered. When I got home that evening, Ethan was sitting on the couch. TV on, but he wasn't watching. He looked at me for a long second before saying, "Traffic must have been bad." I froze. "Yeah, a nightmare." He nodded slowly. "I figured. You were on the other side of town, right? Near Lake Travis." My heart stopped. He smiled then, that same calm, unreadable smile, and turned back to the TV. I wanted to ask how he knew, but I didn't, because asking would mean confessing. That night, I barely slept. The sheets felt heavy, like guilt pressing down on my skin. Ethan's breathing beside me was steady, but his body felt miles away. I tried to text Ryan, but even typing his name made my hand shake. Something told me everything was about to collapse. Over the next week, Ethan's calm turned into distance. He'd leave early, come home late, spend hours on his laptop. I caught him once printing something, and when I asked, he said, "Just work stuff." But there was no work logo, no client forms, just pages, thick and clipped together. I didn't know it then, but those were my days printed in ink. My timelines. My lies. My receipts. A few days later, I found his wedding ring sitting on the bathroom counter. He'd never taken it off before. I picked it up and felt this sinking in my stomach, like the universe had finally decided my punishment was due. The final blow came that Friday. I was at the office, going through listings when the receptionist said, "Lily, your husband's here." I froze. My hands went cold. Ethan never came to my office. Not once in 15 years. He walked in calm as ever, crisp shirt, composed, holding a manila envelope. He smiled, polite but distant. "Hey," I managed, trying to sound normal. "Everything okay?" "Oh yeah," he said. "I just came to drop something off." He placed the envelope on the counter between us. "You'll probably want to open that." My throat dried up. The entire office had gone quiet. My coworkers turned to look, pretending not to stare. I opened the envelope. Inside were divorce papers. And photographs. Photos of me and Ryan. Sitting in his car. Holding hands. Kissing. Walking into his house. My entire secret life printed out in high resolution. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Please, let's talk about this." He raised a hand, calm but cold. "No, Lily. You had your time to talk. This," he tapped the papers, "is my turn." I remember trying to explain, trying to find words, but none came. Just the sound of my coworkers' whispers behind me. "Is that her husband? Oh my God. She was married?" Humiliation burned through me. My face felt hot, my hands shaking. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just looked at me and said, "You should read the last page." It was a court filing, proof of infidelity. He'd hired a private investigator. Every lie I'd told him, every moment I thought was private, he had documented. The calm in his eyes that day terrified me more than anger ever could. Because it wasn't rage. It was finality. "Ethan, please," I begged. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." He nodded, almost pitying. "That's the thing, Lily. You never mean to ruin a marriage. You just do it anyway." He turned and walked out. Just like that. The entire office stayed silent for what felt like forever. My boss called me into his office soon after. He didn't need to say anything. I could see it in his face. The disappointment, the pity. "Take a few days off," he said quietly. "You should figure things out." But I knew what he meant. I wasn't coming back. That night, when I reached home, my bags were already packed. Ethan had done it neatly. Clothes folded, shoes lined up, everything placed by the door. I stood there staring at them. "You packed my things?" He didn't look up from his laptop. "You packed your own marriage. I just did the rest." I wanted to scream, to cry, to explain. But what could I say? That I cheated because I was lonely? That I needed to feel alive? None of that justifies betrayal. He finally looked at me and said, "My lawyer will handle the rest. You can stay with your parents for now." I opened my mouth to speak, but he stopped me again, gently this time. "Lily, there's nothing left to say." And that was it. 15 years gone. When I left, I looked back at our home one last time. The porch light was still on. For years, that light meant warmth, comfort, safety. That night, it felt like judgment. I drove to Ryan's apartment, desperate for someone to tell me it would be okay. But even he looked nervous when he opened the door. He'd already heard about what happened. Ethan had mailed the same photos to his wife. We sat in silence, both realizing our little secret world had just detonated 2 families. That night, I didn't sleep. For the first time, I really saw what I'd done not just to Ethan but to myself. I'd traded a loyal, steady love for temporary excitement. And now I had nothing left. After that day at the office, I didn't exist in Ethan's world anymore. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't even ask where I went. It was like he erased me, like the 15 years we shared had been archived, sealed, and deleted. I moved into Ryan's apartment a few days later. I told myself it was temporary, that things would calm down once the divorce settled. But deep down, I knew I was just clinging to the only person who hadn't walked away yet. Ryan's apartment was small, a 1-bedroom on the east side of Austin. Old carpet, flickering kitchen light, and a faint smell of cheap beer that never left. It wasn't love that kept me there. It was fear. Fear of being alone. At first, we tried to pretend everything was fine. We cooked dinners, watched movies, laughed at stupid things like we used to before everything blew up. But nothing felt right anymore. Every time he touched me, I thought of Ethan's calm eyes when he handed me those papers. Every word Ryan said reminded me that we were both standing on the ashes of something we destroyed. A week later, I got the call. The divorce hearing was scheduled. Walking into that courtroom felt like walking into a funeral I caused. Ethan sat across from me, crisp and composed, his lawyer beside him. I tried to smile at him once. Just a small human attempt. He didn't even look at me. When the judge started reading the documents, I could feel every ounce of humiliation sink deeper. Ethan had proof of everything: the photos, the text messages, the investigator's report. There was no argument, no denial, nothing to defend. The judge's voice was firm but distant, like he'd said these words 1,000 times before. "Given the evidence presented, Mrs. Miller will not be entitled to alimony." My chest tightened. Ethan didn't even flinch. He just sat there, hands folded, like a man watching the end of something he'd already mourned. Then came the financial ruling. Mrs. Miller is entitled to 30% of the joint savings. Additionally, she will reimburse Mr. Miller for $2,000 in funds misused during the affair. The words hit like cold water. I glanced at Ethan. He didn't gloat, didn't smirk. He just looked done. That somehow hurt more than if he'd shouted. The hearing ended. He stood, thanked his lawyer, and left without a single word to me. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't punishing me. He was freeing himself. I drove back to Ryan's in silence that day. My phone buzzed with messages from friends, a few sympathetic, most judgmental. My parents didn't pick up when I called. I don't blame them. They'd raised me better than this. When I walked into the apartment, Ryan was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked pale. "What happened?" I asked. He sighed. My wife filed too. My stomach twisted. "Oh my God, Ryan." He cut me off, throwing the phone down. "She found everything, Lily. Every text, every call. Her dad and brother came to the house this morning. It was bad." Bad was an understatement. He had bruises on his jaw and a split lip. I stared at him, horrified. "They hit you?" He laughed bitterly. "Yeah, guess I deserved it." I wanted to comfort him, but the air between us felt heavy. Toxic. We weren't partners in love. We were partners in destruction. Over the next few weeks, things unraveled fast. Ryan lost his job. His boss had found out through gossip. Apparently his wife had gone to the company and told them everything. Inappropriate conduct was the official reason. I tried to help, but every time I brought it up, he snapped. "You don't get to act innocent, Lily. You blew up your life too." He wasn't wrong. Bills piled up. The apartment grew messier. Ryan started drinking more, beer after beer, muttering about how everything had been worth it, while we both knew it wasn't. One night, I came home from a grocery run and found him yelling on the phone. "I caught fragments. I told you I'd fix it." "No, don't come here. I'm done talking about her." When he saw me, he hung up quickly. "Who was that?" I asked. He rubbed his face. "My ex-wife. She's threatening to file for full custody. Says I'm not stable." And then he said it, the one sentence that broke me. "She says I ruined her life for you." The way he said "you" like it was poison made me realize he didn't love me anymore. Maybe he never did. Maybe I was just an escape, same as he was for me. The silence in that apartment started to feel unbearable. 2 weeks later, Ryan packed a bag. "I'm going to stay with a friend for a bit," he said. "Need space." He never came back. I heard through a mutual friend that his ex-wife's family confronted him again, this time with the police involved. He left Austin. Moved somewhere up north, Montana, maybe. I stopped checking. And suddenly I was alone. I moved back in with my parents. My mom couldn't even look at me for the first few days. My dad tried, but disappointment hung in every word. "You threw away a good man, Lily," he said quietly one night at dinner. "Men like Ethan don't come around twice." He was right. I tried calling Ethan once. Not to win him back, just to apologize. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail. Just a simple, broken one. "Ethan, I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I just want you to know you didn't deserve any of this. You were a good husband. I was the one who lost sight of that." He never called back. But he didn't need to. The silence was my answer. Months passed. The divorce finalized. I found a smaller job at a different real estate office, one where no one knew my name or my story. I rented a tiny studio apartment. Every night, I came home to the same empty quiet that I once claimed I hated. Now it felt like justice. Sometimes I still drive by our old house. The porch light's still there, but it's warmer now. I've seen a new woman on the porch once or twice. Ethan's remarried, I think. A neighbor told my mom he met someone through work, a school counselor, kind, gentle, the kind of woman who probably listens and laughs at all the things I stopped appreciating. And honestly, I'm glad. Because if anyone deserves peace after the storm I caused, it's him. As for me, I live quieter now. No more lies, no more double lives. Just me and my thoughts, which, some nights, are punishment enough. People like to say karma takes time. But in my case, she showed up fast. Took everything I built, everything I betrayed, and made me sit with the ruins. When you cheat, you think you're escaping something: boredom, routine, loneliness. What you don't realize is that you're actually running straight into the emptiness you feared. You trade love for excitement, loyalty for ego, and when the smoke clears, you're left with the truth. You were the problem all along. I used to think Ethan would always be there. I used to think I'd never be caught. And I used to think I was untouchable. But the thing about karma? She doesn't knock twice. And when she finally came for me, she took everything.